And welcome to the CarolinaCast podcast, season 2, episode 2, as we bring you back here on a Saturday, just moments before college game day, week 2 of college football, and then we got finally the NFL season is returning on Sunday. Your Panthers are heading on the road. We'll get into all that. I'm Chris Verma alongside Sam Durham, and if you haven't already, make sure you hit the subscribe button. The CarolinaCast is officially on the road to 2,000 subscribers on YouTube. If you wanted to check us out on Instagram and TikTok, we are at CarolinaCast Sports, all undercase. And if you want to check us out on Twitter/X, we are CarolinaCast_15. Let's go ahead and get straight into this. Sam, how are you doing today?
Doing good. How are you?
I'm doing just fine, but I'll tell you who's not doing fine. The Clemson Tigers get absolutely vanquished on the road. The number 9 team in the preseason polls heads into Durham and gets upset by the Blue Devils at Wallace Wade Stadium. Riley Leonard, 17 for 33, 175 passing yards, but he had that big 40-yard rushing touchdown to really boost some energy for Duke.
Yeah, and I mean, looking at this Clemson team, I mean, that red zone production was about as bad as they can get. And I was looking at their schedule. They're not going to have a time to bounce back from this really until they play the Florida State Seminoles, who had a really good game. We'll talk about them later. But I'm looking at this team realistically. They're not going to have a chance to bounce back from this for a really long time. And I'm not even sure if Cade Klubnik will even be their quarterback by the time that happens. Yes, he had a pretty decent completion percentage, but those turnovers in the red zone, and then, I mean, field goal kicking as well, obviously didn't go as well. 0 for 2 on field goals, so they end up losing by 21 points. I'm not sure who would have ended up predicting this, but the Duke Blue Devils, they're going to be a team that nobody wants to mess with, I think.
Yeah, now Ryan and I were talking about on the first podcast, like we definitely thought Clemson was winning this football game, but we knew Duke had something. We knew Duke was not going to go down without a fight. And certainly they did not go down without a fight on Monday night. I will say this. I think the only reason this Clemson Tigers offense is tied together is because of Will Shipley. Had 114 rushing yards for the Tigers on Monday night. But, man, the quarterback situation is just – it's been rough, okay? They haven't been able to find that Trevor Lawrence replacement. And just all these red zone mistakes, field goal mistakes – you cannot make – and then even sliding. Like, if you're a quarterback, sliding before the first down, you know what you're doing. You're a quarterback. You should know when you're supposed to slide. So just mistake after mistake. And if you're supposed to be a top 10 team in the country and you're going to play like that, I don't know if I can respect you or not.
Yeah, and I mean, you could definitely see that Riley Leonard had played with a lot more experience than Klubnik did that game. Klubnik, obviously, this is only the second game he's ever started. He played a big portion of the ACC championship game last year, but DJ Uiagalelei started that, and then he started the Orange Bowl against Tennessee, obviously, but there were a lot of rookie mistakes. I mean, in the red zone especially, just like IQ plays, like you're saying, slide and stuff, the interception that he had, he ends up finishing with a QBR of only 28. Leonard had one of 85.4, and Leonard may have not had eye-popping stats. I mean, 17 for 33, 175 yards, passing. They did score all 3 of their touchdowns on the ground. Leonard added 98 yards rushing in himself, which was pretty productive for Duke. So they're going to be – both these teams, I feel like, are going to be better on the ground than in the air. But there was a lot of things that I did not think that were going to happen that happened in this game, besides just Duke winning, obviously.
I mean, I will say this, though. I'm going to give a lot of credit to Duke's defense, especially what they have on that defensive line, that linebacker position. Everyone was talking about the amount of depth and talent they have there, and it definitely showed. It definitely showed the amount of talent they had.
I mean, absolutely 2 fumble recoveries in this game, and then 9 passes defended by the defense. I mean, 2 sacks as well. 1 interception. I mean, they were doing it on every side of the game, pretty much. Every aspect of the game, they were beating Clemson in.
So we'll move on from this. Unfortunately, the Clemson Tigers, they fall from number 9 in the country all the way to 25, and the Duke Blue Devils move up in the polls. They move up to number 21. So, Sam, let's go ahead, take a look at this Week 2 schedule I mean, there are some interesting games. We got Notre Dame at NC State at 12 o'clock. And then we've got Ole Miss and Tulane, two top 25 teams playing at 3:30. But then, really, other than that, not a lot of big eye-opening games. Maybe Appalachian State can give North Carolina a run for their money at 5:15.
Yeah. I mean, it's still week 2, but there's still some games. I mean,
then obviously tonight, Texas and Alabama, with game day being in Tuscaloosa, with the number 11 team heading to play the Crimson Tide. Rematch of last year's game that took place at Texas when Bryce Young and the Crimson Tide game-winning drive to beat the Longhorns 20-19. So definitely interesting game coming up with Quinn Ewers and Jalen Milroe. But then
yeah,
I do want to point this out though. Just looking at the standings for the AP pool, we know Ohio State struggled week 1, right? We know playing Indiana, you shouldn't play the football that they played. But are you surprised with Florida State moving up to 4?
I'm not, simply because first off, they received the second most first place votes ever, and I'm glad that the poll is putting a little more effort into like final score rather than just winning, because if it was just by the win, then Florida State would still be at 5. And if it was just by wins, then USC would be in the top 4 because they're 2-0. So, I feel like it was a good move. It puts a lot of pressure on this Ohio State team. But Florida State, I mean, they can't get carried away with themselves. I mean, LSU is a very tough opponent, obviously, but they have more tough ones in the future at Clemson. And I know that we were just talking about that struggle. That is a away game, and it's not easy to play at their field. They do have to play Duke, who I wouldn't have worried about it until just now. So this is going to be an interesting season, but I mean, they did just steamroll a top 10 team in the country. So,
and they made it look easy too. I mean, Jordan Travis, very good game. The receiving core with a great game as well. The defense looked good. I mean, everything was clicking for Florida State. Shut down LSU physically and mentally in the second half, to the point that Brian Kelly just had no clue what he was doing. So LSU falling to 14 in the country. I mean, the standings look pretty good to me. Notre Dame, I think, is very underrated with that transfer quarterback, Sam Hartman.
I think that they're gonna. I mean, this could be final last words, but I think that they're gonna maybe do some whooping on State today.
I think that's true.
Hartman's been playing. I mean, he is. You would have thought that he's played there every year of his career without these last 2 games have been for them.
I feel like Sam Hartman has always played this good football. It's now that everyone gets to see him play because, he's not playing for Wake Forest, he's playing for Notre Dame.
And Wake Forest, they had a top, a top 20, top 15 season 2 years ago. So,
I mean,
he's had some success already.
Correct, and especially all the adversity that Hartman has fought through. I mean, there was a possibility last season that he was unable to play the entire year for Wake Forest due to a heart condition. He comes back, he plays his best. Obviously, the struggles were there. He transfers to Notre Dame, and now, I mean, this Notre Dame team struggled last year with all those upsets. And now you bring in Sam Hartman through the transfer portal, and they're back to being a top 10 team.
It'll be interesting because if you look at their schedule, I mean, at NC State, that's a little bit of a hard game. This is a harder schedule than I remember in previous pasts for Notre Dame teams, because they have to play at home against Ohio State in a couple weeks. They have to go at Duke the very next week after that. And then they have to play at home against USC and on the road against Clemson by ending the season at Stanford. So Notre Dame, honestly, I mean, you could see them go 9-2, 10-3, and they'll probably play like a top 10 team. It's just this strength of schedule is pretty weak.
And then if you want to take a look, just in case you're curious, of the Carolinas teams that are ranked, we have the North Carolina Tar Heels at 17 in the country, Duke moving into the AP poll at 21, and then Clemson falling from 9 all the way to 25, being one of the only ranked teams that lost their first game of the season. The only other is LSU, who lost to Florida State, and they moved down to 14 in the country.
Yeah, and for another team, it may take a while. These may be the only 3 teams in the Carolina area that we get. looking at South Carolina, they have to play at Georgia and at Tennessee in September. So it's probably not going to turn on for them unless they go on a run and maybe beat A&M and Clemson to end the season. But looking at this is probably the teams that we have. I mean, I personally thought that Duke was going to be better than State this season, and that's so far not disappointed me. I did not see them doing better than South Carolina, so. But we have 3 teams, and Duke going up to 21. We'll see how much higher they can go after I'm assuming they're going to get a win against Lafayette today.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that can bump them up 1 or 2, and then their schedule gets pretty easy until that game against Notre Dame I was talking about. So if they can pad some wins, they'll be a 4-0 team. They could be even top 15. So.
And I'll say one more college football regarding thing for Panthers fans, as this week Matt Rule's Nebraska team is taking on Coach Prime Colorado. And I will say this, if we could get a Matt Rule loss to Coach Prime and a win on Sunday, I'd call this a great week.
I want to see some fireworks in that game, and I'm not talking about on the field. I want to see some fireworks on the sideline, okay? Coach Prime, I need you to pull out every single trick that you have up your sleeve, everything that you have in that hat of yours. I need it all on the field, and honestly, I want the play style to be aggressive. I want to see Matt Rule getting mad on the sideline. I want to see tensions be high this game because he never had cared about a single tension for the Panthers, so.
That is very true. And speaking of the Carolina Panthers, let's go ahead and move on to them because we've got some very interesting things going on right before the season starts. So first things first, we have Brian Burns, not completely holding out, but has had some big contract issues with the Carolina Panthers. Now remember, last season, the Los Angeles Rams offered Carolina 2 first-round picks to receive Brian Burns. The Panthers declined the offer, looking to pay the man in the future. Now, 1 year, we fast forward, and now we are here with issues on the contract extension with Brian Burns the coming days right after Nick Bosa gets paid the money that he's gotten. So, I mean, Sam, why all right before Sunday?
I mean, first off, with that Rams deal, I mean, the Rams are very lucky that they did not take that trade because for a team with their draft capital and how, not really talented they are, I mean, that would have haunted their franchise forever. I'm not saying that Brian Burns isn't worth 2 first-rounders, but I am kind of also saying that at the same time. Big deal last night, obviously, with Bosa, and I was reading an article about this earlier. I mean, it's kind of unfortunate that the Panthers waited now because it may take even over $30 million to get Brian Burns to stay. Before that, maybe we could have gotten him for a little less, maybe like 27 or 28. So that's bad to see. And then I think that the focus needs to be on Sunday, though. It's a little too right before a game to get an extension done. So I'm starting to think that this won't happen till after week 1. But I would like it to. I mean, I'm assuming the majority of the team is in Atlanta by now. So we'll see. But the defensive line's not going to do as good without him.
I mean, yeah, of course, the defensive line definitely going to regress without Brian Burns. And then, I mean, just looking around social media, you can see Brian Burns' dad going into different certain posts. Brian's not happy. I mean, if you saw Brian Burns' latest Instagram story, it was a sad Spider-Man hanging off a building in rain. So, I mean, this has really gone way too far. And if you're going to decline a deal of 2 first-round picks for
you might as well pay him.
Correct. For your best player on your team, I think you need to pay Brian Burns.
I mean, I don't really know because, the position that Brian Burns is in right now for this defense, there's not really much stability behind the depth chart. I mean, you can go with Yetur Gross-Matos, but I'm pretty sure it's a contract year for him too. So there's not really a multi-year solution for that spot. So we'll see, but still a pretty good defense all in all. But if there's no Brian Burns, that could end up costing the Panthers a win on Sunday.
Most certainly. I mean, Desmond Ridder is like one of the only quarterbacks in the Super Bowl era to not throw an interception in his first 4 games that he started last year for Atlanta. And that could mean something going into Sunday if the Panthers aren't able to bring enough pressure.
Well, I mean, if you throw that many checkdowns, you're not going to get interceptions.
That's
So
also true. And there will be some.
I know it's a good stat and all, but
Yeah,
it's a little controversial. It's kind of fool's gold in my opinion. But
I think we will see a few amount of checkdowns. When you draft a running back with your first round pick, and he's supposed to be like what, Adrian Peterson now?
that's exactly why the Falcons drafted Bijan. I think and they'll be able to hide Ritter pretty well.
I mean, they moved Cordero Patterson to the Joker position, meaning that he can play anywhere on the football field. But if I'm correct, I believe he's ruled out for Sunday.
Yeah,
Questionable.
I saw a red letter next to his name on the waiver wire. So I don't know if he's in or not. I do want to focus on one injury though, besides DJ Chark being out, and that Adam Thielen is still questionable. I'm assuming he's going to play, but if he doesn't, then I'm pretty sure would that mean the Terrace Marshall's at wide receiver 1? I mean,
Terrace Marshall 1, Mingo 2, and then 3 is kind of, you got to think of that too, because
well, I mean, I'm assuming that Visca would be a 3,
yeah,
but Smith Marset obviously may get a chance or two as well. So
he's gonna get some playing time, that's for sure. I mean, I know it was a preseason showing that we saw of him, but like he still played good football. Like I think
the
that was
Chiefs,
a really solid.
Kansas City clearly needed him on Thursday. So
Yeah, I don't know how we lose that trade just giving up a 7th round pick for him. So I'll take it.
they'll find a way to get something out of it.
So speaking of the Kansas City Chiefs, since we traded for the receiver, I mean, it definitely showed with Kadarius Toney dropping nearly everything that came towards him on Thursday night. But the Lions go into Arrowhead Stadium. Jared Goff is now 2-0 versus Patrick Mahomes, and the Lions catch a win. 21-20 is the final score. I mean, Patrick Mahomes was throwing the AI bots. So, I think we can understand why they lost this game. Not having Travis Kelce, Juju's gone. Nobody's talking about this that much. But does nobody remember Eric Bieniemy's not the offensive coordinator of Kansas City? It's now Matt Nagy. And remember the last time Matt Nagy was making calls?
I don't feel like that affected the game because there were probably a good 6 first downs that were dropped by the Chiefs, and that I feel like the Lions defense obviously got a lot better, but I don't really believe in the hype that it has. I feel like I expected this because last year when Tyreek was gone, everybody said the Chiefs were going to be bad. Juju is still he's a caliber like receiver 1 type player. Like he can play receiver 1 on a team. I don't think that there is a single receiver on this Chiefs team that is capable to play wide receiver 1. So they're either gonna have to trade for Mike Evans or do something. But I mean, Kadarius Toney, his catching abilities looked like that of a play-by-play camper. So I mean, it got pretty ugly there. And then Sky Moore, people expected a lot from Sky Moore this season. I feel like I've been hearing about him the entire offseason. And all I end up seeing from Sky Moore is 0 receptions for 0 yards and 1 rush for 4 yards.
I mean, and it's not just the receiving core you think about. Obviously, Kelsey's out. But then it also is the receiving core. Because you go back to the offseason, Kansas City had DeAndre Hopkins right there. He wanted to go to Kansas City. You had the money to pay him, and then you just let him go.
Yeah, I don't really understand.
I don't understand the logic, right?
I expected them to I expected them to pursue OBJ too. So
try and get some veteran talent for Mahomes because they're gonna have to play on expiring contracts. They're coming down to the final, few years of their NFL career. It's not like they're gonna get a massive deal. Like OBJ did not sign a massive deal with the Ravens.
I mean, all you need is like an Allen Lazard at this point. I mean, it's just. I think that the Giants fans are pretty happy though about the whole Toney situation.
Yeah, they got to be very happy about that. I saw you were talking about, Kansas City signing Jarvis Landry. I mean, why not? At this point, why not?
They're not. I think that they're gonna have to side with what they've got. I mean, he obviously knows he played bad because he deleted his social media, but.
Yeah, Kadarius Toney is a very interesting character, even if you've seen some of the things he's had to happen to him off the field.
But I mean, what a bust for a first-round pick. I'm sorry, I have to throw that out there.
I mean, hopefully he can recover. There's just week 1. There's still plenty of time to go in the season, but it's not like this is the final primetime game for Kansas City. I mean, you're the Chiefs. You're the defending world champions. So a lot of eyes are going to be on Kadarius Toney, Patrick Mahomes, and hopefully a quick recovery of Travis Kelce and a look onto this Kansas City offense. So going back to that whole Brian Burns situation. So there might not be Brian Burns on Sunday. We know there's no DJ Chark on Sunday. And we don't really know. I mean, I guess Shaq Thompson's going to have to be the leader of the defense on Sunday, which he hasn't had to do that in a while.
Jeez.
So how much does this contract issue affect the Panthers tomorrow?
I mean, it's life or death. It's the difference between a win or loss. I mean, in a division like the NFC South, all you need is one player to win a big game. So, looking at this, Bryce is going to have a really good debut, obviously, because that Falcons defense, if Brian Burns is out, I think that the majority opinion is going to be the Falcons defense will be better than the Panthers defense. With Jesse Bates obviously coming in, they already have A.J. Terrell and stuff. Pass coverage-wise, it ranks really high. And then on offense, they don't have much of a receiving core, but the Panthers won't either without DJ Chark. So, on paper, it's not looking good unless Brian Burns is playing.
I mean, unfortunately, I feel like Desmond Ridder might have somewhat better weapons than Bryce Young, Drake London, Kyle Pitts.
Absolutely.
So that's another disadvantage. And then also, Bryce Young is fighting history as he's looking to be the first overall pick to win a game in their debut for the first time in about 20 years. So all these other quarterbacks, including Cam Newton in 2011, lost their debut. He lost his to the Arizona Cardinals. Lost their debut as a first overall pick for the last 20 years at the quarterback position. So Bryce Young, not just going to get a win on Sunday, he's also trying to make history for Carolina.
Yeah, making history for the NFL, I mean.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, now we bring in DJ Chark in this conversation. And do we really – we haven't seen a lot from Mingo, right? We saw a few catches in the preseason, saw some here and there flashy plays. How much do you trust Jonathan Mingo and Terrace Marshall to fill that role of DJ Chark?
Well, I trust Mingo probably more simply because I haven't seen him and that there could be more upside with him than with like Marshall or Visca or all those guys. So I feel like the chemistry could be a little better though. I mean, there were some preseason plays that I thought should have been touchdowns with Mingo and Young that weren't. So hopefully that's figured out, but I think that he's going to have a game on Sunday.
I mean, I definitely hope so. I mean, when he got drafted and when, we're looking into the draft process, looking at a guy like Jonathan Mingo. I mean, Steve Smith wanted him to get drafted to Carolina. He worked with Mingo during training camp, during the offseason. And then you just look at his build. I mean, the guy looks like DJ Moore. He has pretty much the same exact build as Moore.
Well, also, this is a bit of a competition between those second-round wide receivers, I would say, because there are some Panthers fans that say that the team could have gone with, like, Josh Downs or Jalen Hyatt, potentially. So I want Mingo to maybe put on a little bit more than those guys do in week 1, simply because it would maybe help defend the pick a little bit more.
Oh, yes, certainly. And, when I saw when I saw Josh Downs, Jalen Hyatt off the board, we took Mingo. I did not think Mingo would be available in the second round. I was honestly shocked. And to be honest with you, during the first half of the first round of the NFL draft, I really thought there was a chance like Zay Flowers or maybe Quentin Johnston or somebody could fall to Carolina in the second round. And as you know it, all those receivers, Jordan Addison, all those receivers just start going off the board. And then second round was pretty much Mingo, Hyatt, and Downs. And I was really big on Josh Downs. I mean, I put him in nearly every single mock draft. I really, really wanted Josh Downs. But you know what? I trust Mingo just because of the build. And just because, I was going to say he had somewhat chemistry with Panthers players and Matt Corral. Then Matt Corral gets, released by Carolina. Just got released by the New England Patriots about 10 minutes ago, by the way. So he's currently not on an NFL team.
Yeah, well, the XFL exists for a reason, Krish.
Wishing the best for Corral there. Hopefully, the good thing is he won't have to run into Antonio Brown on any type of other football leagues.
Yeah.
So we'll move into our final question of this podcast. We'll maybe stay a little bit away from the Panthers unless, you want to say Carolina right here. Looking at this week 1 schedule filled with some pretty good games. Sam, what is your biggest sleeper? And who do you think could make a big impact and a big splash in week 1?
Is this for the Panthers or is this for the whole league?
Oh, this is for the whole league.
There's one game that I'm looking at, and it is a really big game for both quarterbacks, and I know it's going to get way more headlines than it should, but it's the Packers at Bears game. Yeah. I mean, this is two pretty much new-look offenses. Jordan Love, Christian Watson's going to be out, so he's going to have to make plays with some of those other receivers. And then this is a pretty underrated Bears offense that has Fields, DJ Moore, who we were just talking about. Cole Kmet is still probably a top 50th percentile tight end. And that defense is not that bad. I mean, they're better than a 3-win defense. So it'll be an interesting game, I think.
I think the upset I'm looking at right now is kind of a shocking one, is when Pittsburgh hosts San Francisco.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let me tell you what. I know it sounds very interesting, but you still got a quarterback recovering from a baseball-type injury. Nick Bosa is getting paid all this cash. And we have seen it in the past. When players get paid cash, they don't perform the same. So maybe Nick Bosa does not perform the same. And the Steelers have a very underrated defense. They have a solid O-line. They have solid targets for Kenny Pickett to throw the football to, and Deontay Johnson, George Pickens, Pat Freiermuth, Najee Harris in the backfield. And then at the same time, I mean, their head coach is Mike Tomlin. So I don't think I can ever go against Mike Tomlin. And then what worries me the most, and this might be kind of ironic, is that Steve Wilks is the new defensive coordinator of the San Francisco 49ers. And I know it worked sort of with Carolina, but I really just think that was a one-hit wonder. I don't think Steve Wilks would be a good defensive coordinator, especially when the Niners are moving on from DeMeco Ryans, who took the Houston coaching job.
Yeah, I mean, that one is one that I have to. The final one I want to say is that I think the Patriots have a pretty decent chance of beating the Eagles on Sunday, simply because if you give Bill Belichick 9 months to practice, well, when did the schedule come out? May, so that's 4 months to prepare for one game. He's going to have done his homework by now. I think no Miles Sanders is a pretty underrated thing for this Eagles team. They don't have C.J. Gardner-Johnson on defense anymore, so I think that it's going to be – I think it just comes down to whether Mac Jones is year 1 Mac Jones or year 2 Mac Jones. They're both pretty drastically different people.
I mean, especially when you have an idol in Tom Brady that's going to likely – I believe he's going to be honored in week 1.
I think you're right about that.
Yeah, especially when you have a guy like him. And also, I found out breaking news about the Patriots today. Not only did they release Matt Corral, but they are bringing back Bailey Zappi to the 53-man roster. So there's still a lot of hope for New England.
Yeah, well, I'm surprised that Bailey didn't even make the 53-man roster in the first place. I guess he hadn't had that good of a preseason, so does that mean that he's going to be filling in at that backup quarterback spot, or do they have another guy as well?
I would believe so. I have to tell
Yeah, I think he is. He's the only other quarterback besides Mac on the depth chart is Corral.
Yeah, and they just released Corral to fill space for him.
Did they end up cutting that standout out of Louisville? I forget what his name was.
Oh, Cunningham, right?
Yeah, did they end up getting rid of him too?
I hope they didn't. He looked incredible in the preseason. And I'm not sure.
And Malik Cunningham, I don't know what happened to him.
It's still saying he's on New England's roster. He might be the third string now because they got Zappi back, but
or he's on the practice squad or something.
Yeah, but I believe he's still part of the New England Patriots organization. So with that being said, we are going to wrap this one up. Sam, do you have any other things you want to add to this one?
Not really. I think that we've covered about all that we can.
Alrighty, so that is going to do it for Season 2, Episode 2. We have College Game Day coming up next, as we'll get ready for Week 2 of the college football season. And then tomorrow at 12:30 p.m. Eastern, the Carolina Panthers Week 1 head on the road to play the Atlanta Falcons. The NFL season is back, and we will cover that game. So I'm Chris Verma alongside Sam Durham. Once again, we are on the road to 2,000 subscribers. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. Instagram and TikTok, we are at CarolinaCast Sports. And Twitter/X, we are CarolinaCast_15. Thank you all so much for watching. For alongside Chris Verma, Sam Durham, and the rest of our crew, we will see you later today for College Game Day and tomorrow for the Carolina Panthers Week 1. Goodbye, everyone.